We've been following our life purpose for the past 12 years, and today we're going to help you find yours. In 2012, we realized we were in jobs that we didn't actually like. We were making good money, but we were tired of doing work that just didn't excite us, and we didn't feel like lit up by it at all.
Over the last 12 years, we have moved from one thing to the next when it comes to following our life purpose. We started out doing kids cooking classes, we moved to the farmers markets, then health coaching, then business coaching, then spiritual coaching, then to helping others uncover and live their life purpose, making a difference in the world. And so today we want to dive into how can you find your life purpose, live your life purpose in 2024. And it's a really good time because I feel like we are no longer persuaded by what we see other people doing. We're no longer buying into money can buy happiness, that making the most amount of money is the most important thing, that being in a job that we hate is okay because everybody else does it. We are more connected to our souls than ever before. The opportunities are abundant. And so if you are feeling like, hey, it's time for me to do the dang thing, this video is going to be really perfect for you.
Okay, so today in this video, we are going to share a process that you can follow for finding your life purpose and actually start living it as well. And so the very first thing that we have with this process is to operate from your heart. And so that means you're operating more from feeling what is the right thing to be doing, rather than using your brain to be using the logic of what you're supposed to be doing. And this approach, just kind of so we're on the same page, is a little bit more spiritual. Well, it is more spiritual. And it's not so much as like the science-based personal development, like goal setting, arena that like we're so familiar with today. And so we're operating not from the ego, but we're trying to operate more from like the soul level here. So what feels right versus what makes sense in your brain.
Yeah, for me, when I think about living my life purpose and kind of operating from the ego versus the heart, I think when I first started, I thought I would see other people doing things and I thought the more people I helped, the better, right? Like that, and that's very ego, right? It's fame, it's fortune, it's numbers. And now, I think about it and I'm like, okay, for me, being of service and helping others uncover and live their gift is a big part of my life purpose. And so I used to think I want to help the most amount of people. I'm going to be on Oprah, I'm going to be helping millions. And obviously, like I am open to that. But now I realize that even if I just help one person, like for example, if I help the little girl across the street and I help her make a difference, help her believe in herself, she goes on, she helps all of the people that she comes into contact with, right? She becomes the president, she influences a lot of people. And so I think tapping into what Peter was saying, operating from my heart, and I'm focusing on that versus my ego, that's like, oh, more is better. It's more in alignment with my soul. My soul is happier with that approach.
Yeah. So you can see what we're talking about here is what feels right, because the logical thing is that a lot of us are so familiar with is, okay, go to college. Okay, what's going to be your degree? And sometimes it isn't what feels right, because I personally feel like we'd probably have a lot more artists in the world, a lot more writers, a lot more creatives that have gone through higher education, because that probably just would have sounded more fun. And as a result, I think we've had a lot of people go through college and they're like, okay, I need to be thinking about my career. You're 18 years old and it's like, I have to figure out the rest of my life. And I'm 18, like, how could you make this decision? How could you possibly make the correct decision at 18? How, the chances that you would never change careers, it's just so unlikely. So that's really what we're talking about here, because we went through that, right? I went to school and I got a degree in construction management, like a Bachelor of Science in construction management. What I'm doing now is so different from that. And it was scary to leave that. And it made a lot of sense. And I had a lot of background in like math and physics and business. And so for me to leave all that is illogical. And I was, but it was like, I didn't know anybody else. I wish that I had this video, right? Like I'm teaching what I wish I would have had access to. And Sarah, she kind of went through the same thing. Like she was on track to be a lawyer, and in her head for like probably 10 years leading up to that, she's like, yeah, this makes sense. It makes a lot of, logical sense.
Brain sense.
Yeah. Where it's like, she would be good at it and she would make a lot of money at it. It felt very, very uncomfortable to leave that. And that's really what we're talking about today, because a lot of us, what we really want to do, it makes us feel uncomfortable, right? But we're helping you with that today.
Yeah. Eventually there comes a point where it actually feels more uncomfortable, and you might be in that position right now. It feels more uncomfortable to be doing work that no longer lights you up. It kind of feels like you're dying a little bit inside. Maybe you get anxiety, maybe depression, right? Because your energy, it wants to be expressed. Your soul wants to be expressed. And we can only go so long without living our life purpose, without growing and evolving before it's kind of like, what's the point? Like, am I literally going to wake up and do this every single day? I don't want to live like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah just naturally moved into the second part of this process, which is first, it's like you want to be more like feeling what is the right thing to be doing. And then the second thing is, well, what do you get excited about? What are you lit up by? And like, that is the key. If you always followed what you were most excited about and what you just felt like you wanted to do, you wouldn't have to watch this video at all. But like Sarah's also saying, like, we're not used to doing that.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, when it comes to just doing what you've always wanted to do, we've been programmed to believe that if we were to do that, then we would be lazy. We would lose our jobs. We would lose our money. We would become homeless. Like, all of these fears come up. And I think it's really important to remember that a lot of that is programming, right? It's from society. It's from social media. It's from our family. Those actually won't come true. Like, once you start living that's actually false, right? Like, fear is false evidence appearing real. It seems really real, but we can tell you from experience, when we started following our passions and our joys, like, that's when we really started to do work that we love, make a difference, fully support ourselves, live this lifestyle. I remember when Peter and I first got started, I would see all these people making videos and helping others, and they looked so lit up and happy. And I was like, I want that. And it's like, now that's exactly what we're living, because we followed what was lighting us up one step at a time.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of, you feel like you have to be very courageous and brave to just do this thing that just seems so simple and so natural, like at the core of it. I mean, really, like, it's kind of funny that we would have such a hard time with this, but I think it's just, it's the level of conditioning. I mean, it starts when you are so young. Hey, what are you going to be when you grow up?
I see it in my friends' kids. Like, they're 4, 5, 7, and they already have this conditioning. And I'm like, how do you know this? And even my friends, they're like, how do my kids know this? But it's because it's in the programming. It's in the TV shows. It's in the Disney movies. It's in everything, right? From a spiritual lens, like, come from past lives. We're working through not just like conditioning from this life, but conditioning from past lives as well. So there's definitely a lot to unpack here. And the thing that's really cool, kind of like Peter was saying, it's like following what lights you up, living your purpose. It is really simple. But we have all of this, what I often call, we have all this baggage that we're bringing. And so as soon as you start to shed that baggage, do the inner work. And I know some of you watching this, some of you in our community have done this. So you guys are ready to step into your purpose. And it does feel a lot easier. You're like, oh yeah, like, I am ready. Let's do this. The more inner work you do, I've found like the easier it is to move through all of these steps that we're talking about today, and really bring your life purpose into this physical reality. And we're going to talk about that in this video some more, like some of the blocks that come up, that even doing the inner work, you'll still face some of these blocks.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the next thing that, because we kind of wrote all this out, right? I'm like, it's funny because we're like doing this, and I'm like, okay, so we're going into step two, and
That's why I
Sarah gives me this look like, are you serious, dude? Like, come on, like that's so like you're messing with the flow here. But she just naturally went into the third thing that we had written down.
Well, it's very, there's definitely like a pattern, right? There's a pattern that you're going to follow. But if with working together, like if like we're so different, like we're alike, but we're so different how we operate. So to keep both of us on like a structure, it's like, I'm like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, but you will pick up what you need to pick up for all of our content, all of the content that you see, like, like you always get exactly what you need. So I'm not kind of sticking to it, but I'm sure that we will follow it.
Yeah. So so the next thing is, right, you know what you're like, you're inclined, you're feeling inclined to do what you feel is right, what you sense is like the right thing for you to doing. It could even just be the next thing, or it could be a general field, that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm more curious about this. So the next thing, like Sarah was saying, is like there's going to be some resistance basically that comes up. She had said like blocks. I mean, it's the same thing. And the way that I think of like resistance, like the root of resistance is fear. And it's coming from your ego. And a lot of this it's all kind of part of the same. Your ego is afraid of what it doesn't know. And your ego wants to use logic. Your ego wants to use literally what all of your prior life experience. But how could you ever do something new? Like you always have. So that is being outside your comfort zone, and the ego doesn't like that. And the ego will do everything that it can. It'll throw every fear it can think up, every fear that it has ever learned from a book, from a movie, from a show, from other people. It'll take it and it'll use it to try and help you not go outside your comfort zone, really.
To stay comfortable.
It's unknown for the ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you're trying to do something new and then your mind is like, oh, but what about this? And you're like, yeah, like that feels like it could totally happen. And it's exactly like Peter was saying. It's because your ego knows that those are the things that you will relate to, that you will be afraid of. And so when you're trying to start something new and you're like, I just don't even know how this could ever work out, it's because you've never done it before. Of course you don't know how it could ever work out. And then we go to worst case scenario, fear of failure. But it's like you then have to train your mind to start saying, what's the best thing that could ever happen? If in your current reality, if all of your past, you're like, it's been okay, it's been then thinking about, hey, this new thing could be 100 times better than anything you've ever experienced before. And that is literally the work that you have to do when it comes to stepping into your life purpose, stepping into something brand new.
Yeah. So it can look like fear of failure. It can also you can have some self-doubt, where basically you need to learn how to trust yourself a little bit more, and because and we all know people like this, where they don't follow what other people's expectations are for them, right? We all know people like that. And we did not used to be people like that. We are now officially like that, where we don't really listen to what other people are saying. Sometimes we don't even listen to what the other person is saying because we know what the right thing to do is. So learning to trust yourself and learning to realize when you're doubting yourself and what this next step is for you. But it's judgment, and it's also comparison, and like what Sarah was saying earlier, like sometimes you can be thinking like, oh, well, I want to be, well, she didn't say this. You could be, maybe I want to be a writer. I really love writing, but then you immediately take it way too far into the future rather than, oh, I'm just going to start writing today and whatever I want about. It's like, I'm already thinking like the practicality of this and the how it's going to happen. Well, if you watch anything about manifestation, you cannot try and figure out the how. The how is the one thing that you cannot have. You don't want to put any energy into that, and you don't want to have any attachment to it. So yeah, it's learning to trust yourself, but it's also, it's all of the resistance that comes up.
Yeah. Another one that comes up a lot is imposter syndrome, right? And so it's kind of like, who am I to do this? It can then lead into comparison. somebody else is doing what I want to be doing, right? So it's like they're already doing it. Why should I do it? And so for these, like a few little tips that have really helped me is with imposter syndrome. Instead of focusing on me and like, oh my gosh, like I don't look like this person, I don't sound like this person, I don't have the education, I feel like such an imposter. I like to think about the person that I'm helping, right? And so instead of focusing on myself, I focus on the person that I'm helping. Hey, I really want to help somebody find their life purpose. Okay, like what do they need? How can I focus on them? And that really takes a focus off of myself and puts it on other people. And it's so much easier to show up, right? So instead of you saying like, oh, I'm not good enough, think about who are you here to help? Who are you here to inspire? Like using the example that Peter gave with the writer, like who do you want to inspire with your words? Who do you want to encourage? Who do you want to bring joy to, right? Thinking about that can be really helpful. And then when we were talking about comparison, I've worked with a lot of health coaches over the years, and it's really common for them to be like, oh, this person is already doing what I'm doing. Why should I even try? Why should I even do it then, right? But I always like to tell them, like, we are so unique. Every person is individual, just like leaves on a tree. No two are the same, right? And so it's really easy to see them be like, oh, they're just like me, or that's what I want to do, so I'm not going to do it. But a lot of times the people that you're here to help, the people that are going to resonate with the message that you have to share, like they don't even know about that other person, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're cutting your life experience down by comparing yourself to somebody who's not like you at all.
Yeah. Well, think about how many people there are in the world and where you are right now, and you're on the verge of really following your life purpose, right? And think about all those people that are not even close to being on the verge, right? All those people that are kind of, so to speak, behind you, they're all going to need help. They're all going to need help kind of raising up and into this enlightened way of being. It's more in alignment with like what you're actually supposed to be doing. And so that's a lot of people, that is way more than half of the world, I mean, it's probably like 75, 80% plus of the world. So they're like, you could be doing kind of what seems like somebody else is doing, but you're actually not, because you are you and they are their own person. You guys have completely different perspectives. Nobody has the same exact perspective as you. Nobody has all the same life experience as you've had. That is a fact. It's not, you can't replicate that,
And that's why it is so important for you to be yourself and do what you really want to be doing, because that's where you're going to shine the most. That's where people are going to relate to you the most. Okay, real quick before we move on to the next step in the process, judgment. So I didn't grow up in a very judgmental home. So I didn't really have this fear of judgment. So this is kind of new to me. And a lot of my clients over the years have struggled with fear of judgment, friends and family who don't support them, right? And one thing that I remind them of is when other people don't believe in your dreams, when they try to shoot your dreams down, it's not because you're not capable, that's not possible for you. It is a reflection of what they believe is possible for them. And so it's really important when you have a big dream for yourself, your life purpose, a book you want to write, a video you want to make, whatever it is, it's really important that you stick to it and follow it through, because what you're doing is you're expanding what they believe is possible. Most of our clients, our students, are expanders for the people in their life, for people around them, right? And so if other people are judging you, I want you to remember it's like, oh, it's actually not about me. It's about what they believe is possible for them. And let me show them that more is possible. More is available, not to like prove them wrong, but to help lift them up so that then they are like, oh, she did it. Maybe I can do it too. It's really empowering.
Yes, I like that a lot. Some of these things, Sarah, she starts getting into them. I'm like, oh man, that could be its own video right there, And these are things that they've come up so many times, like over the years of like Sarah and I working as coaches, so many of these topics. And so it's moving through it. If you want like more help, you have questions, please comment, with whatever is coming up for you, because we can cover more of this, and we plan to, but we might be able to cover it sooner if you let us know.
Yeah, we like to hear from you guys, and One thing that I wanted to add to that really quick is sometimes my clients will ask me like, oh, like, why is everybody dealing with not enoughness or imposter syndrome or comparison? And a lot of times it's because it's in the collective, right? And we came here so we could work through these. So just, I know it can be really frustrating, especially, sometimes I get frustrated too. I'm like, wait, like, didn't I already learn this lesson? Like, why is it here again? And it's like, oh, there's more to it. I can go deeper into this. So with the ego, I remember having like an ego death in 2022. And I was finally able to let people help me. I didn't feel like I had to do everything myself. And then I remembered, just a few weeks ago, I saw the ego showing up again. It's like, oh, I need to be perfect. I need to get it all done. I'm like, well, I'm like operating my ego. So, sometimes people will say ego death. It's not like the ego died, it's like, it's still going to come up and try to keep you safe. And you got to be aware of that. So yeah, I just wanted to say, like, if you're like, man, like, why do I have to deal with this? Why do I have to experience this? Or all my friends are experiencing this too. It's really cool. As you start doing this work, you make it available for other people to do this work too. Kind of like I was talking about with expansion. If you're like, oh man, I'm really going through grief right now, like you moving through it will allow others to move through it as well.
And sometimes you moving through whatever it is in your life, right? All the experiences, all the things that you've overcome, sometimes that's what you're here to help other people with. Happens a lot. Again, we've seen that so many times as coaches. Like, it just works so perfectly where it's like they want to help people through the very thing that they had just come through because they learned so much from it, and they could help people basically, get there faster or avoid some of the pitfalls that they had experienced. And so that's kind of like the next part that I wanted to move into, which is the actual sharing of your gifts. So it's, you've decided and you've what it is, what that you kind of want to get started with, and you've overcome the resistance, and now you're ready. You're moving into, okay, now I want to get started, right? So then it's just thinking about, well, how do you want to do it? And this does not have to fit a specific form. Okay. And what we're talking about here, it doesn't mean that this needs to be a business. This doesn't mean that it has to be a job. It doesn't mean that it can't be a job. So it could be a job. It could be a business. It could be none of them. You could just help people and you don't charge for it. Right. It's just, this is why you're here. This is who you're helping people with, so you could be a volunteer, it could be a hobby. There's it moving into this space. It's like just being completely open, because when you take that first step towards actually moving into it and acting on what you're supposed to be doing for your life purpose, the next steps will always present themselves. They will always. So if you're just like, all I know is what the next step is, that's perfect, because you are in the present moment. You don't want to get too far into the future, because then you're like, oh, overwhelmed. Oh, I'm thinking about it, way too much, or you start to become attached to it, or you're really trying to figure out how it's going to all kind of happen for you.
Going along with sharing your gifts, I think that, like Peter was saying, what can often come up is we get too far ahead of ourselves. And even for me, like doing these YouTube videos, I was just feeling like, oh, this is like a new thing and it's like challenging and it's hard, and like thinking about it's easier to do what I've always done. But I think that if we don't move forward on the thing that is exciting us now because we're thinking like, oh, like, I guess it's kind of like comparison. Oh, I'm not as good as this person, or they're already doing it. Then I think that's when we do have regrets. We look back and we're like, oh man, I should have gotten started. And I think that a lot of times getting started is the hardest part, because right now in 2024, it's like there's so many people who are living their life purpose and doing the things that you want to do, which can be so inspiring if you're in the right headspace. But if you're in the space of like, oh, like I'm behind, like everybody's already doing it, it's too late for me, like all of those limiting beliefs, then that can really hold you back, right? Really having like the beginner's mindset of, oh, I'm excited to try this, and I don't know where it's going to go, but right now it's really lighting me up and it feels like fun, is such a great place to be in. And so much growth comes from that. So I had to remind myself that with these videos, it's like, okay, like right now, like it doesn't look like I think it should look or how I think it should go, but like it sounds fun right now. And I know that there's going to be a time where I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm glad that I started that and was okay with being a beginner. Really just taking the pressure off completely can be a really great place to start with that.
Yeah, the mind really wants to just have it figured out. It's set in its ways. It doesn't like to do anything new, really. It's not.
Yeah.
Doesn't The ego's not really into it.
I do want to talk a little bit more about getting started and just how important this is, because over years, we have seen so many brilliant humans have these great ideas, these things. And like for me, I'm a straight shooter. So people will tell me their ideas and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can feel it. Like I have goosebumps. Like this is amazing, and they're just like, oh no, I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to say that unless I'm like feeling that energy, and then they don't get started with it. They don't move forward with it because they're overthinking and they're trying to figure it all out. And when Peter and I first started on our path to our life purpose, I remember thinking about it and trying to figure it out. Like, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? Because I like to figure things out, right? Like, I don't like ideas just sitting there. Like, I want to see them, how it all works together. And so I remember really like trying to think about, okay, we could create yoga mats. We were really into yoga. Create yoga mats. Okay, how would that work? Oh no, it's too hard. Doesn't make sense. Okay, we could create an oatmeal business. Okay, how does that work? Okay, we tried that. Okay, don't really like it. And it wasn't until we started, teaching classes and getting in there that we could fine tune. And the reason why that works so well is because the universe is a co-creation. It's creating with us, right? And so we have to take that first action to show it like, hey, we're serious about this. We want to move forward with this. And then it'll be like, okay, let me help you. Let me open this door for you. Let me introduce you to this person. Let me show you this person at the right time, right? And I really think when I look back at our journey, I'm so glad that we had the courage to get started and try things, right? And not have to have it all figured out. And we're willing to take risks because if we didn't, I think we would still be in that apartment trying to figure out how's it all going to come together. Like, I just feel like if we never actually took action,
For sure.
we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you're like, okay, great, I'm going to get started. And then something new comes up, right? You always have to be aware what's coming up, what's trying to keep you back, And, sometimes, I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, like that just does not seem like the thing that I want to do. You probably don't want to do that anyways, So it's a very natural kind of guidance system that we're encouraging you to really foster. Yeah, I love that so much. Like, we'd still be stuck in that apartment.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's so true. Like,
I couldn't figure it out sitting in the apartment. I was like, how is this going to work?
You'll never be able to move forward.
It wasn't until we got out of that apartment.
You have to actually get going. And it doesn't need to be like so dramatic and drastic, and like, you don't have to just like risk your whole life, like it doesn't need to be like that, like you can have your logic included in it. It's just be aware of like what you feel like you want to be doing and allow yourself to be moving in that direction, right? Because if you really feel like you want to do this new thing or move more into it, like you need to find a way to allow yourself to do that, because that's how you're going to move forward to doing it.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'll leave you with is trusting yourself. The more that you can trust yourself, you have these ideas and you have these downloads for a reason. And so the more you can tap into trust, the better off you're going to be. And if you're watching this and you're like, man, Sarah, I have no idea, I really encourage you to find a relaxing place, close your eyes, and just connect with your heart, your higher self if you have that practice. If you don't have a higher self connection, let us know. We'd be happy to do a video on that, because that has really helped me a lot on my journey. And just see, like, ask, like, universe, show me my next steps when it comes to living my life purpose. And then listen, like, we have to create some space. I know for me, like, before like 2021, 2022, I didn't create any space. I filled all of my time. I was constantly consuming. And it wasn't until I started creating space that I could hear my higher self come through, those downloads come through. And then the next part was like, are you going to trust them? Are you going to follow through on them? Right. And when you pair those together, you have the higher self connection, you listen and you follow through. That is when the magic happens. It all starts coming together.
Yeah. So the end of like all of this is to just completely detach from the outcomes, right? Release the expectations. It's going back to that you don't need to know the how. And so just really paying attention to any time that you're really feeling like it needs to be a certain way, right? Because it doesn't actually. And Sarah and I, we don't really like, we have an idea of what the essence of what we want our life to be, right? But like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? Like, so like right now, we're living in Mexico. A year ago, we had no idea we were going to be here. Now we're here and we're like, okay, well, maybe we won't always be here. And then immediately the mind's like,
Where are you going to be?
Where are you going to be? How are you going to get there? You know, what's your life?
That's what Peter's mind sounds like.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like, but we come back to that. You know, we come back to that center point of, oh, yeah, like I can't control the future anyways. You know, the only thing that I can do right now is just be in this moment. And the same is true for all of us. It's the only way that we can operate. I also want to throw in here that you shouldn't worry about the past repeating itself. And I say this a lot in like stuff that we share, but the past cannot repeat itself. You're a different person, you know, so don't worry about the past. Don't dwell on the past. If you do, you can actually recreate it. So you want to detach from the past, live in the present, and don't worry about the future, right? That's the magic right there. So that's our process. This is our process for finding your life purpose and living it, right? It sounds simple, but you will literally spend your whole life working on all of these stages, you know? Sarah and I, we've gotten really good at, after doing this for like 12 years, really good at knowing, okay, what do we feel like doing? Now, we started off on our journey just going, we got away from what didn't feel right. But only within these last few years, we've really honed in on this process that we're sharing. Okay, this is the good stuff. This is our best advice. Yeah, we'd love to know kind of like where you're at in it. Which part are you moving through? Okay, so that was a lot of energy. It was very intense coming out. Sarah, like, she was really feeling it. This is a lot kind of like being delivered.
Yeah, I think I just want to say that whatever step or phase you're in with this journey, like sit with that and see what comes through. I think like Peter was saying, like this is multiple years in the making. And I think that, you know, a lot of programs and a lot of advice are like, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And then go for it, you know? And it just feels very masculine to me. And I think that again, expectations can come up where it's like, oh, I need to have it my whole life figured out in 3 months. By the time I finish this YouTube video, like I got it. And it's like, that's not really how this life works, right? Like you're growing just by watching this. And if you just pick up one thing, it's going to allow you to live your life purpose. Cause like, guess what? Like I am not a perfect human yet. Like I'm still figuring all of this out. And yet I get to live my life purpose every day. And so I think if your mind kind of does that, or you see this and you're like, whoa, this is just like too much. It's like way out there. It's like, just take what you need right now. And you're going to be further along than you were before you watch this and before you consume this information. And I know you probably are a lot further along than you're giving yourself credit for.
I love that. And it's so true. It's so true. And moving out of the masculine, right? And the ego wants it to just be all so simple. And I say the ego, it's the mind, right? Our mind, we want it to just be so simple. And it's like, you watch this video, you follow the strategy, and it's like in 3 months, your whole life is, you know, figured out. And it's just like, it's just so far from that, you know, I don't want to say complicated, you know, but it's not straightforward, you know, it
would be so boring if it was. Right? You figure it out in 3 months, then what the heck are you doing with the rest of your life? You know, when you're in it, you're like, yeah, I want to figure it out and I want to get there. But then it's like, you get there and then you're like, what's next? Like, I'm just bored.
If you're watching this video, you know, there's more to life than making money, right? What the definition of other people's definition of success is probably very different than what yours is. So keep that in mind, you know, how they're living their life and the rules that they create for themselves and they follow, you don't have to do that, right?
Yeah. I think that, my intention is hopefully that this video inspired you, because I think for me, I like to consume and watch things that inspire me to go out and live my purpose and do work in the world and create things. So hopefully this video inspired you to take something away from it.
Yeah, I love that. And so if you believe that this could inspire other people, we encourage you to hit the like button, because that's how YouTube operates. You hit the like and then it shows it to more people,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what we have today. Hope this was helpful, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, friend.